Hello, all, and welcome to Bennis Stories, a series of interviews with people who knew, loved, were influenced by, worked with, wrote with, were students and mentees of Warren Bennis. This is Kate Bennis, Warren's daughter. This series is created for the Warren Bennis Leadership Institute at the University of Cincinnati's Lindner College of Business. My partner in this endeavor is Betsy Myers. Betsy was a dear friend and colleague of Dad's, worked with him at the Center for Public Leadership at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government as its executive director. She has also been a senior advisor to both President Clinton and President Obama. Today, Betsy and I are delighted to welcome George Kohlrieser. Kohlrieser is Distinguished Professor of Leadership and Organizational Behavior at IMD, which is in Lausanne, Switzerland, and used to be called IMD when my father worked there in the early 60s. He is an organizational and clinical psychologist, hostage negotiator, award-winning author, consultant, conference speaker, and media commentator. After becoming a licensed psychologist, he worked with the police department in Dayton, Ohio to reduce homicides in domestic violence situations and was held hostage himself 4 times during this period. He has since worked with the police, the military, and humanitarian organizations in hotspots such as Israel, the Palestinian territories, and Croatia, as well as with police departments and police academies around the world. Kohlrieser now uses his experience in the world of executive education and corporate leadership training, focusing on how to resolve conflicts through dialogue and communicate with stakeholders, politicians, investors, community members, and protesters, particularly when these people are adversarial, aggressive, or emotional. At IMD, Kohlrieser is the founder and director of the flagship High Performance Leadership Program, an intense 6-day IMD program for experienced senior leaders. He's also developed the Advanced High Performance Leadership Program for former participants, and he directs the Inspirational Leadership online program, which was awarded the gold medal for Best Advance in Unique Learning Technology Research by Brandon Hall, that firm. Kohlrieser has won numerous personal and program awards during his career, and in 2006, his best-selling book, Hostage at the Table: How Leaders Can Overcome Conflict, Influence Others, and Raise Performance, was named Best Business Book of the Year by the French Business Leaders Association. And that book was published through the Warren Bennis imprint, which is kind of exciting. He also won, that also won the Best Management Book of the Year by the German Business Bookseller. And his second book, Care to Dare: Unleashing Astonishing Potential Through Secure-Based Leadership, was listed among SoundView's best business books in the year of 2013. So we are so excited to welcome George Kohlrieser. Welcome. Hi, this is George Kohlrieser, and we're here with Betsy and George and I. And George, you were just talking about how you spend most summers in Dayton, Ohio, which is where you're from.
Yeah, I was originally born here in an old Indian village, Wapakoneta. So my extended family is all here, my grandkids, my son, etc.
Etc. And then most of the year you are
In Lausanne, Switzerland.
So tell us about IMD and what you do there.
Well, IMD is for executive education. And by the way, your father first came there in 1961. I don't know if you know that.
I do, because my parents were dating.
It was called Imadia then, changed names. But I teach there a program called High Performance Leadership for 26 years now.
Wow.
And it's very successful. We offer it 15 times a year, 60 top leaders at a time. So we're focused on executive education.
Do you run this program?
Yeah, I'm the director.
And tell us what distinguishes this program.
What distinguishes this program is that it's transformational in the sense that it starts with mind's eye, how you focus, how you pay attention to something, and then it turns to how you connect, even with people you don't like, bonding, and how you go through that cycle of bonding, of attaching, bonding, and then separating and grieving, and then how you recover from that. And it includes the whole idea of secure base, which is the foundation for how you create psychological safety in yourself and for others. And then a lot on dialogue. How do you talk? Leaders talk too much.
Mm.
And they have to learn how to manage their words. And then conflict management, how to manage their difficult conversations and to learn how to bond to people they don't like. And then we cover a whole variety of things through coaching. So they're all in a coaching group of 5 or 6, and we take 60 top leaders at a time. And it's full almost a year in advance
And are these all business leaders?
for the most part. Sometimes we get an NGO leader, the CEO from an NGO, Red Cross, or Create Humanity, but they are essentially leading people.
Yeah. And can you tell us a little bit about how you met Dad? And then we'll get back into your work a little bit.
Oh my God,
But-
I'm very touched as you say that, Kate, because he was a special man.
Yes.
And I first learned about him when I graduated and was looking at how to deal with conflict. And the name Warren Bennis, of course, is a legend. And I met him when he first came to IMD. He was there in 1961 for a year or two. And then he came in 201, I think it was 202. I invited him to attend the HPL. So he taught in HPL. And then he also did an open seminar for executives, 500 executives. So I knew of his work, of course, very much, but I met him when he finally came to Lausanne.
When you say you knew his work, how did that influence your work, or did it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he was a mentor. He had a vision in which he saw leadership as something learned. It was not something you were born with. It's not genetic. And he had this inspiring attitude, the ability to create hope. And the latest research on what leaders really lack is they don't inspire hope. And your father did that. And from the first moment I met him, and you were there when I first met him, you and your husband in Lausanne in 201 or 202, I guess. And he had this incredible ability to make people feel hopeful and listened to. And he talked about authenticity. And I think you got the films of the conversation with him and Carl Rogers. This was absolutely mind blowing. It's a gold mine because you hear him create that same vision that Rogers creates, acceptance and unconditional positive regard.
So
Wow.
powerful, but
Yeah.
I've so forgotten. It used to be that this was in the 60s and 70s, something people talked about a lot after World War II.
Yeah.
And how do you feel with your students now? Do you feel like they are open to this? Are they cynical? Like what's happening?
Well, we used to have a lot of cynical people. Probably 50% came cynical or 60%. Now it's less. We have people who are 80%, 85% even, because someone has recommended it to them. They've seen the changes. So they are now open to emotional intelligence. And Dan Goldman, who is also a friend of mine, he had a game-changing process in introducing emotional intelligence. And so they're open to that and they realize they got to do something different. And what is unique, and this came from your father, leadership is a relationship. It's not a transaction. You have to create that relationship. And the power, as you hear with Carl Rogers speaking, the power is in the patient, the power is in the leader, and how you open that up through empathy, through listening. I mean, your father was so far ahead of his time, Kate. He had the vision. And when he came to IMD, I'm told that he was discouraged from coming because he should get tenure. It was before he was going to get tenure at Harvard. And he said he wanted an adventure. He wanted something new. And so he comes to Lausanne for a year.
I know this is because when my parents were courting, he was in
Uh-huh.
on maybe 2 years. I don't know, but
Yeah, I think it was 2 years actually.
he was actually at MIT and he was up for tenure at MIT, but instead he took this foray to Lausanne, and everyone said, "What are you
And
doing? You're up
the
for
dean
what are
said,
you
Warren, you're crazy.
right? You're
You're turning
crazy.
down the possibility of
You can't do that." But I
tenure."
think what happened was that the office next door had a Harvard business school professor who spoke to Harvard and said, you got to get Warren Bennis. And so Harvard offered him tenure. So then
Oh,
MIT came back and said, no, we'll give you tenure right now. So in fact, his going to Lausanne got him tenure faster.
okay.
It's just
All
a
right.
lesson to say, do what you want to do. He thought,
Yeah.
I need to take this
Yeah.
experience. I need to have this experience instead of I need to get tenure right away.
And you may also remember, Kate, that he was a soldier in the Second World War,
Yeah.
deeply, deeply affected by that experience. And when he came back, he was really international in his mindset. And that was one thing that was
Mhm.
very clear, positive mindset and how to focus on hope. And this became a part of his whole mentality. And what he taught leaders. Leaders are not born leaders.
Yeah.
They're leaders based on experience. What happens to them? Their relationship with their mother, their father, grandparents, bosses, teachers, friends. I mean, it's all about how the relationship happens. And the unique thing about him is that he understood the Rogerian idea that the power is in the leader. It's not something you do as a leader to develop people. It's you give them environment, you create the psychological safety. And of course, I don't think he used the term psychological safety so much. He used the term authenticity and trust. But now with Amy Edmondson's work, we now know how important safety is. People have to feel safe to unravel what is inside of them. And so many leaders think they have to be teachers. Well, they are in a way a guide, but the power is in the leader. The power is in the patient, as Roger said.
Can you say more about that? I think of these teachable moments, and I remember visiting Tom Peters and Susan Sargent when our kids were really little in Vermont. And he said, oh, I'm so glad you're not teaching your kids every second. The teachable moments have gone too far. People are teaching their kids every second instead of letting them live and experience.
Yeah.
So, can
Yeah.
you talk a little bit about that?
Oh my God. Your father knew everybody, included Tom Peters. Well, the whole idea behind this is the fact that you create the environment. And it's the relationship of the leader, it's the bond that's created. And this idea of bonding, I learned from John Bowlby way back in the late 60s. And it became a key part of my work as a psychotherapist. I was a clinical psychologist, psychotherapist first, focused on violence and conflict management. And then I moved over from psychotherapy to conflict management training, and then to leadership when I moved to Lausanne and IMD. And so the whole idea is, how do we create the environment for people to unravel the blocks that hold them back? And those blocks are unconscious. I think Carl Rogers says something very significant, that it's not the power of the secure base. He didn't actually believe in mentorship. He believed that the environment is created by the secure base. The environment is created by the coach. And the idea of a mentor teaching was kind of foreign to Carl Rogers. It was, how do we create the environment for the person to develop or learn their innate talent? I think that strongly influenced your father to have that same philosophy.
That is so interesting. Betsy, isn't that fascinating?
Yeah, I know. I was just thinking it's so that's remarkable. So it ties back to safety, right? To create the
Yeah,
environment
yeah,
where people can grow. And I like what you just said too about their innate talent to explore, or I guess to understand their own authentic
yeah.
behavior or the
Authenticity
skills.
is not
Yes.
something you teach, it's
Yeah.
something you create. It's something that you bring out by the honest dialogue, the relationship, the bonding. And your father was an expert bonding.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That truer words are never said.
Can you talk a little bit more about your trajectory? Because that is really interesting to go from psychotherapy to specializing in conflict resolution. And you worked in hostage
Negotiation. I'm a hostage
negotiation. Can
negotiator,
you talk to us about your
working on the
trajectory?
street, talking violent people down. I was being prepared to carry a gun. And after I was held hostage 4 times, but after the first time, I realized the power is in my words, the power is in the relationship, it's not in the gun. So I turned down the experience of carrying a gun, although I was trained. And I really focused on teaching myself and police officers how to use words. Words are very powerful, and how to change somebody's mindset who wants to kill other people or wants to kill themselves. And they then change that mindset to think about something different. You inspire hope. And that was one of the messages from your father, how to inspire hope.
You said you
Yeah.
were held hostage 4 times. Was that because you were in the process of trying to talk somebody down and they took you hostage?
Yes, it wasn't because I was
Or just
stupid.
bad luck?
Some people would say I'm stupid. No, it was because I went into situations that were really out of control. And the first time was with a very psychotic man in a hospital. And I was there only for about 3 months working with the police. So I met riding with them because they didn't trust psychologists. I mean, I had a hard time getting accepted. So the lieutenant asked me to go in and talk this guy down because it was in a hospital emergency room. He had a scissors to a nurse's throat, and then he cut her throat after about 3 minutes. And then he came towards me with that scissors. Now, what do you do when your face is scissors? Well, I could have tried to call the police in. I could have thrown my body at him, but he was much bigger than me. Only thing I could do is talk. And that I did. He put the scissors to my throat, and we engaged in a very powerful dialogue. Sam, and I was asking questions. Sam, that was his name. How do you want your children to remember you? That was the key. Sort of a miracle. It just came to me. How do you want your children to remember you? And he said, don't talk about my kids. I'll kill them too. Bring them here. Nobody loves me. And I said, well, we're not going to bring your kids. And I just asked a simple question. How do you want them to remember you? And that was a turning point. From there, he started to de-escalate. Within about 12 minutes or 15 minutes, he agreed to let Sheila go. That was the nurse's name because she needed medical treatment. And within a half hour, he walked out, giving up his weapon voluntarily.
That is
It's
so
remarkable.
powerful. Oh my
And
God.
on the way, there was three very important questions. You know, when you give people choice, and this is part of the psychological safety, Betsy, that we talked about earlier. You give people choice, you ask them questions. So my question was, how do you want your children to remember you? And then after we agreed on an arrangement, we had scissors. And so I asked him, Sam, do you want to give me the scissors or do you want to throw the scissors on the floor? Simple question. He said, I'll give them to you. He gave them to me. That was a very powerful moment of psychological safety. And then asking him, you have to be handcuffed. You committed a felony. This is serious. Do you want to be handcuffed by the police or you want me to do it? I would like you to do it, George. Choice. And then a third point. Do you want to be handcuffed in the front or in the back with your hands behind your back? And he said, in the front. I gave him three very powerful questions. This is something leaders don't do. And
So
Warren understood that, how to give questions. So many leaders just tell people what to do. They use command and control. But when you give choice, you invite the person to participate in the relationship.
I'm just scribbling notes.
It's a very simple process.
I was going to say it's so simple, but so powerful.
Oh my God, how many leaders do you know who talk too much? I mean, they'll talk you to death, or they don't answer questions, or whatever the garbage is as they speak. How do you talk plainly, clearly, and in 4 sentences or less? I teach in this course how to talk with the core part of dialogue in 4 sentences or less. And if leaders can't do that, then we make them talk in 1 sentence. They learn that.
When you're teaching people how to have dialogue with just 4
Yeah.
questions, is it like always like that? Is about 4 questions that you ask in any
Well, it's not
situation?
necessarily 4 questions, it's 4 sentences.
4 sentences.
So we're teaching 4 sentences, and we do a lot of role playing. I don't know if you remember when you were there, Kate, you and your husband were there. We do a lot of role playing. So we practice all kind of things. People who won't bond to you, people who are toxic, people who have difficult conversations, and they practice and they get feedback from a small coaching group.
It seems to me that those questions, getting to the heart of the matter, knowing what the right question is something that we could all use in all relationships and as leaders.
Bingo.
Right. And
Bingo.
so what are the questions you would want leaders to ask today? Or does it just change all the time depending on
Well,
context?
I'm often asked, can I write a book on the questions you should ask? I probably could, but it's in the spontaneity. It's in listening to the relationship. A husband who doesn't listen to his wife, a wife who doesn't listen to her husband. How do they listen and are curious about what the other person says? And this is what Carl Rogers says, and your father too, unconditional positive regard. If there's one thing, and I worked with Carl Rogers for 3 years in La Jolla. Well, your father was up in Los Angeles at the time. Those were 3 very powerful years. To hear him say, uh-huh, it made your whole body vibrate. He
Really?
was made fun of that, a non-directive therapy. But it was all about relationship. How do you listen? Really have empathy. And then he moved from that individual work. When I was there, he was in that transition of going from individual work to groups. So then you remember T groups,
Hmm.
the whole story about T groups and what happened with them. And I think your father has written some stuff on T groups as well, because that was part of the agenda of what was going on in the early 80s and late 70s.
So the idea of bringing into leadership today, this idea of listening without agenda, it sounds like, in a strange way. Is there
Yeah,
an agenda
you have to
there?
be curious. You
Yeah.
don't listen to get what you want to hear. You want to know the truth of what other people are thinking, what's going on. The CEOs who are successful don't come in and tell people what they should do. They ask questions, they're curious, and they're able to engage them in a dialogue, saying the truth. And then they act on that. And that was the other part of what your father really emphasized, vision. He had this vision when he went to Lausanne that he wanted an adventure. He wanted something different. He wasn't completely satisfied, I guess. And he had this vision. I need something different. And he spent those year and a half, 2 years in Lausanne.
So the leader carries the vision, but doesn't didactically impart the vision. How does the leader translate the vision into action?
Okay, by asking first the question, would you like to know what I think? You
Hmm.
don't just say, this is what you should do, or this is
Right.
what I think. It's asking the question. They have to be curious. And then you say your idea once you've heard others. And generally, this is the power of groups. And I don't know if you know about transactional analysis, but I was trained in transactional analysis, was president of their association for a number of years and been very involved. It was a very meaningful experience. And how you create group dynamics, group therapy, group processes to bring out wisdom in that group. So you can see the reactions of people to other people's thoughts or ideas. So a group can often be more intelligent than an individual leader.
George, can you tell us about your books? Because I know you
Okay.
published through the Warren Bennis imprint at Wiley.
Oh my God. He was the force behind that. He was the one who said, because once he was there and I knew him, we talked often on the phone, and he said, you got to put this into writing. He stayed for part of the program and saw what was going on. So the whole idea of being a psychological hostage, it's a one thing that somebody puts a gun to your head and holds you hostage or scissors to your throat. And in 95% of the cases, you can talk yourself down. You can talk yourself out. Hostage situations with weapons are solved in 95% of the cases. It's police suicide or it's other factors that the police make a mistake, they're too aggressive. And then you can move from physical hostage to psychological hostage. You can be a hostage to yourself. Barriers, you don't think you can do it. You have too much self-doubt. You are too arrogant. Whatever that barrier is, you can be a hostage to other people or to yourself. So that was the theme of the book, Hostage at the Table, how you break these barriers. It was in the line of work that your father did and taught, and Carl Rogers. and Dan Goldman. I stand on the shoulders of so many wonderful people, including your father's vision. I mean, he really influenced me. And it was the idea, how do we break these barriers? The whole idea, once you break the barriers, then the real power of the leader can emerge. And it's not just with leaders, it's with any person who's believing negative things. And that affects the state. So the whole idea that your state is filled either with negativity or doubt, anxiety, or it's filled with joy, optimism, hope. And this is what we now know. Gallup came out 3 weeks ago with new research that the most powerful thing leaders are missing and employees want is hope.
Wow.
Not trust, not safety, not empathy, hope. And how many leaders are negative? They don't communicate hope. So out of hope comes trust. That's very important. It comes safety. That's very important. It comes authenticity and so forth. But the foundation is in hope.
That was Barack Obama's whole campaign.
Yeah, you're right.
The audacity of hope.
Yeah. Your state is something very powerful. This is a TA idea, came from Eric Berne, but it was there for a long time before that. I mean, people don't really invent new ideas, they sort of bring them to fruition. But the state is your emotions, your mindset, it's your attitude, it's your physiology. A bad mood is a state, a good mood is a state, being happy is a state, being angry is a state. So we have these thousands and thousands of potential states. Some people just get into a negative state and they become toxic. I mean, you both know, you're here in America. I'm shocked. I'm really shocked to see the hostility that people have. My goodness, if you don't go fast enough at a light, somebody toots your horn, somebody gives you the finger, on and on.
Yeah.
And you don't feel that in Europe so much?
No, not so much. It's coming. It's coming more and more. And it's different for French, Italian. We see this in cultures, but it's not as prevalent as it is over here. Here, people react like this. And then the other thing that is so amazing, and I often wonder what Warren would say about all the use of iPhones. My God, to go to a restaurant, see a family of four, two kids, two parents, they're all on their phones. They don't talk to one another. They don't have a dialogue. And people walk down the street, they don't watch where they're going. They're looking at their phone. They walk in front of a car. I mean, it is incredible. You land on a plane and people immediately pull out their phone. The whole plane is full of phones. Yeah. So you asked me about my books. I talked about House at the Table. The second book, which Warren supported also, was Care to Dare. And that was based on this idea of secure base. After I met John Bowlby in 1983, and it took me 2 years to get an appointment to see him. And you won't believe this. He gave me 15 minutes. He was curious about how hostage negotiators use attachment theory. That got his interest. I had a good bond with his secretary, and I pleaded with her, get me just 5 minutes. I just want to sit down and have this man hear how he's influencing. So she got me 15 minutes. We talked for those 15 minutes and he asked me, did you have lunch, George? And I said, no. He said, would you like to have some lunch? I said, sure. So we ended up having a 2-hour conversation over lunch about attachment theory and how he came up with this idea. And so Care to Dare is the foundation for psychological safety. I thought the most interesting part of the first book would be on conflict. Turned out it was not. It was on psychological safety and on secure base. What is a secure base? How do I need secure bases? How am I a secure base to myself, etc.? So that was when we launched a research project and then wrote the second book, because a secure base isn't just rescuing. It's caring, that's the foundation, but it's also daring. Daring yourself, daring others.
So it's interesting that it's called Care to Dare instead of Dare to Care.
Right. That's often, people often say, well, why don't you have it the other way around? No, the foundation is caring. You have to have psychological safety if you want to dare. You want to take risks. You want to take chances. It's best when you have a psychological safety, a person And that's what Warren was. That's what Carl Rogers was. That's what Dan Goldman is. I mean, these leaders that I stand on their shoulders, it's their work. And it helped me bring out something in myself that I didn't know before, but I learned it. And then I put it all together. So we stand on the shoulders of others. And that's something we have to teach leaders. There's no such thing as a self-made leader. You stand on the leaders before you, your parents, your mother, your father, your grandparents, the teachers, the bosses you've had. Who knows who's all a secure base? But not only a people can be secure bases, a home can be a secure base, a place can be a secure base, a picture can be a secure base, a symbol. There's all kinds of possibilities. What gives you protection? And that opens up then the whole story of emotions and grief, loss. How do you face loss? This is what destroys leaders. They lack resilience. They don't go through loss. They don't recover. And so we have to understand grief. And with another one of my colleagues, Charles, we wrote an article for McKinsey Quarterly on the role of hidden grief in leaders and its impact on leadership. There are so many leaders walking around carrying grief from their childhood, from their adolescence, from their early experiences at work, and they haven't dealt with that grief. So we teach this in HPL, how to grieve and how to recognize it. We don't force it, but using that whole idea of Carl Rogers and your father, how do you create this through dialogue, awareness?
How incredible to think that as leaders, we have to take responsibility for our own histories and our own grief and the damage that we have experienced in order to be a good leader. People don't think of that. They think of it as a set of skills that you can read about and employ.
Yeah, it's skills that somebody's going to teach you. No, it's your experiences that make you the leader you are. You know, one of the most powerful experiences your father talked about was when he met Colin Powell. Do you remember that?
No, tell us.
He had all the badges on. He went dressed in military uniform because he was meeting the top of the military, Colin Powell. And then he realized when you meet an established leader like this, you don't wear medals. And so he was very embarrassed. It shocked him. But he recovered very quickly, managed quite well. But he always told that story. Know the culture you're walking into. I wore those medals, and it was a big mistake. I was the only one in the room. All these military guys dressed in their suits. I was the only one there with my medals.
What a great story. He talks a lot about context and knowing the context. So that's a perfect example. This University of Cincinnati program is hoping to get leadership development into the classrooms for 55,000 undergraduates in some way, and really through Dad's lens. So starting with self-knowledge, then context, moving through the different ways that Dad thought about leadership. What are some of the things you think that an 18-year-old through 22-year-old, what are the things you hope that we touch on? What are the things you hope we give them the opportunity to experience?
Number one, mindset. How do they think? How do they focus? Are they positive or negative? There's a natural negativity bias. We can easily turn to the negative. But how do we get our mind's eye to focus on the positive? And that determines the state. Secondly, how to deal with emotions. Our young people do not know how, generally, I don't want to over exaggerate, know how to deal with emotions, especially emotion of grief, which is loss, anger, fear, all of these emotions. How to understand those emotions and their impact on yourself and others. Knowing your triggers. What are your triggers? And so this has to happen with their having an emotional experience. Teaching leadership, as your father well knew, is not a cognitive process. It's a part, the theory, but it's mostly how do you experience yourself as a leader and how are you authentic? We have so many young people who are leaders, but they're not authentic. And that was another great game changer when your father wrote his book, Differentiating Management from Leadership. How do you become a leader as opposed to a manager? We have too many managers who tell people what to do, command and control, and then we measure it. And we went through some ridiculous systems over the years of how leaders thought this was the way to do it. And integrity and honesty. I just read this morning a very interesting article on toothpaste. Now, we all use toothpaste, huh? And Colgate, who is here in Cincinnati, in Ohio, had a problem. Their sales of Colgate toothpaste were falling dramatically. So, what did they do? They took a 5 centimeter pushing out that hole and made it 6. Their sales went up 40%. Just 1 centimeter, 6 rather than 5. So you used more toothpaste than you needed. And is this ethical? Is this integrity? I think your father would have a fit when he would read something like this. Is this honesty? Is this how you build trust? I will never buy Colgate again.
Here's a question you probably cannot answer. Do you think everyone can be a leader?
Yes. So
Okay.
did your father.
Yeah.
Your father did too. Well, no, not necessarily because they're a hostage to mindset, their past experiences, whatever. But if you can get to the barriers inside, it's possible for anyone to become a leader. And self-leadership is the first form of leadership. Your father talked about this. How do you become a self-leader? You can't lead others if you can't lead yourself.
Assuming we're all leaders and can all be leaders and
We
should
all possibly can be leaders.
possibly,
Not
and we
all are.
should step up if we can
Yeah,
because
yeah.
we need leadership right now. We need good leadership. What are the steps that leaders can take to shift the culture back to a culture of empathy, trust, curiosity, just
Okay.
modeling it?
Number one, modeling is very important, but number one is self-awareness. This is important. You have to find meaning and purpose. Your father always talked about the foundation of meaning and purpose. Why do we do something? So
Mhm.
you have to understand the purpose of this, the meaning of this, and then self-awareness. How aware are you in being able to do that? And then from there, you look for models of how to imitate, and you find people who encourage you to be authentic, to be vulnerable, to be emotionally open. Our leaders today are not emotionally open. Look at what's going on in Washington, D.C. Look at what's happening with Tesla. I mean, we could just go through organization after organization, the detachment and the lack of bonding. How do we get people to come back and be human? Leadership is in relationship, and it's not command and control. The power is not in the leader, the power is in the follower.
What I love is unconditional positive regard.
Yeah. I first learned this from Carl Rogers. I think it was after I left the Catholic seminary in 65. Got my master's degree in 68. I went to California to La Jolla. And when I heard him speak unconditional positive regard, bingo, that really hit a bell. And he
That's,
always used that.
yeah, it's beautiful.
Have you seen his tape on talking to a schizophrenic named Gloria?
No.
There's a tape of him, portions of it, because she was with him in therapy for 9 months and never said a word. Now, who has patience to talk to a patient for 9 months and she never says a word? He did self-directed reflection and he listened to her. After 9 months, she cried.
Oh,
Tears came down her eyes. She still didn't use words. It took another 3 or 4 months for her to put words to her pain. She was really catatonic.
oh,
Wow.
He would say over and over, and he would ask a question. You must feel this. And he was made fun of for this. When I went to Ohio State, they made fun of non-directive therapy as a mockery. They would mock Carl Rogers, but he was onto something. Our psychologists today, with cognitive behavioral, with all kinds of systems of therapy, are really missing the emotional element, the genuine bond. It's not in the power of the therapist. It's not in the power of the secure base. It's not in the power of the leader. It's in the power of the relationship. How do we bring this into marriages? How many people are married and they don't have a relationship? It takes work to make a relationship whole and complete, and you have to work on it.
You reminded me of a study that my husband often quotes about, looking at all the different psychotherapy modalities. So they were looking at dialectical behavioral therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy and trying to figure out which one worked, which one had more success in helping people feel happier. And what they ended up finding out was that it was not the modality. No matter what the therapist said they were practicing, it was which clients felt that their therapist liked them.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Conditional positive regard.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's brilliant research.
Yeah.
I see dissertations. I'm invited to read dissertations. And there's so much research that's just plain garbage. But you have to go through this research. It's like a threshold to go through. And nobody reads it. And this is one of the things about IMD. We do research, but we're not focused on research. And the idea is CEOs, top leaders, they don't take time to read articles unless it really speaks to them. And how do we get research that speaks to the leader to help them lead better?
Yeah.
If you can find a common goal, you can bond to anybody. And that's really what leaders have to learn how to do.
Mm,
Find that common goal, and then you act from there. If there's no common goal, then it's going to be pretty hopeless until you find that
yeah,
common goal. And there's a common goal with everybody. I've had
I love
hostage
that.
situations where the only common goal I could find is we're breathing the same air. That's going pretty deep. We're breathing the same air, right? Now let's go from there. How
Mm,
are you hold hostage to yourself? And stop blaming other people and start looking at yourself. This was Warren's idea, self-awareness. You
yes.
hear these
Hmm.
interviews, Betsy,
Of the Carl
the researchers.
Rogers.
Yeah. So when you hear that, you'll understand this idea of how you formulate a goal. And then once you get that goal, you move from there. We teach leaders how to do this. We're not teaching them to be therapists or psychologists
Yeah,
or social
yeah,
workers, but we're teaching them how to coach. And then they practice this by role playing. And
yes.
you know about the two-chair approach. You know about this.
Mm,
This is a technique from Fritz Perls and Marino out of psychodrama. You put parts of yourself on the other chair. You say, okay, imagine me in a chair. And what do you say to me? Or you be in that chair. And what do you say to yourself? So you
yeah,
talk to yourself. This, I don't know that Carl Rogers ever used that. I never saw him do that in the times I was with him, but he did it indirectly. How do you think this would affect you? And then you get the person to find in themselves the truth. And this was an idea that Warren always used. Know the truth.
yes,
You can't solve a problem if you don't know what the problem is. You have to
yes.
know the truth. That's the fish under the table.
Mm,
And for leaders, most of the time it's unconscious. It's not something
yes.
they're conscious of. The key is triggers, understanding the emotional trigger. I would love to have a dialogue with your father. What year did he actually die?
2014.
Okay, so not so long ago. The world is different today.
So
I'd
when
love to
he
have,
died, Obama was in office.
okay, I would love to have a discussion with him about our president of the United States and to ask him, what does he think of social media? What does he think of artificial intelligence? Can artificial intelligence duplicate human emotion? And so far, the answer seems clearly no. They're approaching it. They have models that have emotion, but it's not a relationship based on human experience. The hormones in the body, 200 hormones, are affected by how we talk to somebody and their reaction, the oxytocin all the way through the rest. So, how does artificial intelligence fit in this? This would be one thing. and for him to understand how we got to this place. And part of it, I think, is he would say that we got here because the parents were too busy being parents, trying to earn money, trying to survive. And so they were not good at parenting. I grew up on a farm. We didn't even have television till I was 7 years old, I think. But we would sit around a fire. We would have personal relationships. There's something about the farm life. Many people now don't even know where milk comes from. They think it comes from the grocery store in a plastic carton. But there's a cow behind this somewhere who produced that milk. So that would be one thing I would want to talk with him about. And the other thing is I regret not telling him how much he impacted me. I would want him to know that I am in part um, because of his relationship with me. He was a secure base. He was a secure base, as I'm sure he was for you, Kate.
Absolutely.
Did you know him, Betsy?
Oh, yeah. When I was the executive director of the Center for Public Leadership with David Gergen, and
Ah,
Warren was head of our advisory board. I
oh,
got to be really close to him and consider him one of the most important mentors of my life.
wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful.
And that's how Kate and I got connected
Ah, you
through
got connected through there. Are you
Kate.
connected
Yeah.
to the universities of Cincinnati Warren Bennis Institute?
Yes. So they brought me in as well as Kate, just as an advisor to help them with the thinking through the Warren Bennis Institute. So I've been involved with that with Kate.
I didn't mention also that my son and I, we started an institute called the Kohlrieser Leadership Institute. And it's the idea that we take the caring, daring model down to teams. And I have a team of experts who can go in and teach that to leaders all over the world on teams and how to do that caring and daring.
That's so exciting. I have a book called Take the Lead that Warren wrote the afterword for and mentored me through the whole experience. But, anyways, with YPO, I went out to Nigeria and Kenya, and it was transformative.
Wow.
And one of the things I was really taken with YPO in Nigeria because it's not an easy country, and they were all expats from different countries. So I was like, how do you all manage to live here through the chaos? And one of the YPO people, so I'll never forget this, said, "Oh, we don't see chaos, we see opportunity
Wow.
through the chaos." I
Mindset.
just thought that was so interesting.
I think you're the first person that we've spoken to is really bringing in that deep psychological history that you and Dad have.
Yes,
Yeah. Well,
yes.
and I
Really
think there's
important.
probably much more that I'm unraveling as I go through this. I'm here with my one son. I didn't talk about the death of my son. That was a changing point when Doug, who is my oldest son, died in 1993. It was
Oh,
soon after his death that I shut down Shiloh and I decided to move to Europe because I couldn't go back and forth. So I understand personal grief personally,
oh
Oh,
but
yeah.
it became a part of working with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She's another one. Unfortunately, she's
Yes.
not living, but she was one of those key mentors. This is what is so missing today. They're young psychologists or young leaders don't have enough exposure to these mental giants. And
yeah.
your father, Carl Rogers, was a giant
Yeah.
sitting on the gold mine.
He
Yeah.
was a giant. Yes,
Well,
absolutely.
George, I'm so sorry about your son. I understand now why this grief work is so important to
Yeah,
your work.
yeah. Well, I had a lot of support, but it was a shock. He
Yeah.
was in an accident. He was studying at the University of Cincinnati Medical School.
Oh,
He was studying to be a doctor,
no.
walked
Oh,
across the street and a truck hit him. He was in a
oh,
coma for 5 days, and that was a tough time.
oh,
Oh,
George. Oh, tragic.
Yeah,
Oh, God.
yeah,
I'm so, so sorry.
yeah.
oh.
Thank you for that. And there have been many blessings that come out of this. I
Oh,
was in a Catholic seminary for 10 years, almost
You
became
thought
a Catholic priest.
priest?
Huh?
You almost became a priest.
Yeah. I went through the novitiate, the year of silence. I left then when I was at the major seminary. But I was angry at God for a time. And I soon realized this was not personal to me. there was something behind it. And this was Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And she was really very clear about that. And so I renewed my faith with God, and I'm a very, very religious person, still strongly Catholic, but a very liberal Catholic.
Yeah.
And I love Pope Leo.
Oh,
I
yeah.
love Pope Francis.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love Pope Francis too. Yeah.
Yeah. Dad had some quotes from Pope Francis on his computer. He had little quotes and little
Oh,
stickies.
he did. Oh,
Mhm.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I wish you all the best
Thank
in.
you.
Because I think
Yeah.
that's a key, really important part of the self-knowledge part
Oh
of
Yes.
yeah,
this. Yeah.
this is
And
what gets most leaders in trouble. They
yeah,
have emotional triggers,
yes.
or they don't show emotions.
Yeah.
Right.
They become cold and detached.
Yeah.
The bureaucracy in this country is incredible.
All right. Thanks, you guys.
Okay,
Okay.
bye.
All right. Bye, guys.